Michael, welcome to the show. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you do.
Okay. I'm Michael Rushforth. I have a doctorate in Hispanic linguistics from USC. I also have a master in computational linguistics, also from USC. I work primarily in Spanish. I work in the modern languages and literatures department. I was the assistant chair for a few years. And most recently, I've been moved to the dean's office, where I am the assistant dean for experiential learning initiatives.
Dr. Rushforth, you have seen changes in education, but I don't know if we've ever seen changes as revolutionary as this AI revolution we're experiencing now. Can you speak to how this change has impacted our students?
Absolutely. So I've worked with AI for a while, in the sense that I had to take artificial intelligence as one of the courses that I took as part of my master's in computational linguistics. And I was always interested in systems that could pass the Turing test, meaning you have a system that somebody interacting with can't be 100% sure if it's human or if it's a machine. And so that was early in my educational career as an undergraduate, to say, could we have chatbots that could interact with students? And my area of emphasis was to see, could they be conversational partners that would work as partners outside the classroom? And that really hooked my interest. In fact, I have a chapter in my dissertation. I talk about that. In terms of how I've seen it change education most recently, I should have been aware. This is where I feel like I had a blind spot in an area I shouldn't have had a blind spot. But when ChatGPT hit the mainstream, right, and suddenly everybody knew about it, it took me by surprise how good it was. And I know it has lots and lots of limitations, but it also has a lot of power too. And I think the students recognize that. And I realized that things that I had been using as assessment methods could be fake. And that really took me aback a little bit and say, how am I going to create meaningful assessments for my students? So it used to be, right, you came, get educated, you learned a lot of information. And then Google and search changed the utility of that. It meant that how much information do you really have to retain if you know that you can look it up everywhere? Like, it's the old joke, right? Where they have, they say, well, when they were teaching us math and you had to memorize your timetables, and you say, well, I can do it on a calculator. What if you don't have a calculator with you and everybody has a cell phone in their pocket? Similar things happen with language education. Like, what if you don't have a dictionary with you? Well, you literally have a translator, and it's not perfect, but it could be arguably better than my first and second semester Spanish students when they get out. So you start questioning, what is my role here as an educator? If it used to be collect a lot of information, then it was synthesize and analyze. And that's still an important role. It doesn't take away the fact that students have to think and think critically. But there are tools out there that can simulate that to the degree you're like, maybe not to an A, maybe to a B, maybe to a C, and maybe with a really good user that does it, they could fool me and I won't catch it. And that's one part. Some teachers fear it. On the other hand, just like with the calculator, I think I haven't checked 100%, but I think that the SAT now allows you to have a calculator on it. It means that the nature of the work is changing. So I wouldn't say I was an early adopter, but I was a rapid adopter when ChatGPT came out to the mainstream, and I could sign up for an account because I could see the utility in doing things that would normally take me a lot of time. Like I'm talking about responding to an email that I know I have 2 or 3 bullet points, and the crafting of that email might take me a lot longer. So I would have it respond to my emails, take an outline and turn it into an email. That saved me time because I'm a slow emailer. And I said, well, how about for students? Can I use this tool in a way that's productive for them? And so I've started making the fact that we're using AI transparent. And also highlighting the limitations. So bringing in the critical thinking skills by one of the things that I had for as an assignment was to have students learn something by having a conversation with ChatGPT. In my case, I had them learn about case systems. So that's in linguistics, but it would be some grammatical principles in terms of how nouns are marked. And I said, what if ChatGPT lies to them? Like, it shouldn't matter to me. I'm going to have them have this conversation with ChatGPT, explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old. So they really understand this concept. And then I ask them afterwards to go and say, was it right? So go, now that you think that you know it, go find some sources to confirm or deny the information you have. And so by making ChatGPT move to the foreground, we know it exists, but we also know it's wrong. And so I address both sides and say, try to find the limits of how useful it is. And I want to say that that's been effective, but it's still yet to be determined. I think this is, for me, one of those cases where the technology has gotten ahead of the pedagogy for me. So although it's exciting to be on the forefront, right? It's there. I want to embrace it. Not all of my colleagues feel the same about it. It's very much like it's a form of cheating. It doesn't represent your actual thought. And there's a certain amount of, that's interesting. I still want to use it just to find out, because I know it'll exist and it'll be a part of their careers for the foreseeable future, I think.
Absolutely a part of their careers for the foreseeable future, guaranteed. The AI community likes to say, this is the worst these models will ever be. Just imagine. And it seems like we get an update every so often that, again, changes the game. For example, we just had ChatGPT 4.0 released, and it's a conversational model that mimics the movie Her, and it has this ability to translate on the fly. And for someone who, loves to teach Spanish, this must give you feelings, right? Because learning a language gives us not only the language skills, but the thinking skills and the neurons to solve problems outside of learning that language itself. Can you speak to the implications of having these super intelligent assistants in our lives for education, for communication, for promoting programs, for example? Because I know that you promote programs too.
Yeah, that's a rich environment. I have a lot of thoughts. I don't know how many directly answer your question, but so we'll talk with the one that does, which say language education. I think there's a huge power. A lot of our students have that social anxiety of talking to somebody for the first time in a foreign language because you feel threatened. You're exposing yourself in a way that says, be funny. You want to be yourself, I think, more than anything and all those subtleties of communication don't come through in your foreign language because you're just trying to work on the basics. And so there's this face-threatening aspect of being in a conversation with somebody in your foreign language. And I think that having something like a conversational agent like ChatGPT in Spanish is something that would reduce what they call the affective filter, right? The stuff that makes you really, really nervous so you don't perform well. You can bypass that a little bit because now it's a way of doing it without having an actual person there to threaten you. And you can ramp that up or down depending on how you want. So one of the projects I'm working on with a group here on campus at UTSA is building conversational agents that are embedded with not only having the AI handle the conversation, but also be in a virtual reality environment. So you could simulate that. You can imagine you could do this either chat, we could do it conversationally, or you could do it in an embedded environment. And that, I think, allows people to have that experience of having a simulated conversation environment.
Some identity safety there, right?
Yeah. In a way you feel safe.
How do you leverage AI in your social media efforts?
I have used it in an internship class that I was taking in terms of producing copy on the internet, because you can create personas. You can have some of our social media posts generated by AI. I haven't done it yet. I've wanted to control the voice of the area that I'm promoting, which is study abroad. But when I took this course, I could definitely see how somebody that's in marketing or communication would leverage that for the day-to-day communication that you put out there that generates it quickly. You don't lose control, but it's easier for me to say, generate 5 posts and say something like this, find my favorite and edit it to my voice, than it is to come up with 5 posts on my own, right? It accelerates the creativity process on that. When I was in this class, I actually talked to somebody that, and again, on the art side, right? So there's the written communication, but there's the visual communication that goes along with it. In that area, I guess I can say something about how AI has helped me, because I needed to generate a media campaign to promote study abroad. And we wanted a poster that conveyed the excitement of going on a study abroad program. And here at UTSA, one of our colors is orange. I wanted to have our students receive a backpack that brands their identity as having gone on a study abroad, that makes them something else. And I needed to create materials as I was pitching the idea. And I could have used like stock photos, but would they have an orange backpack to cool colors? Would I find somebody in the kind of location I wanted? And so I was able to describe in words the image that I wanted. And I created a mock-up of a poster with the understanding it was a placeholder, that somebody else was going to come in and make this more polished and professional. But even with the mock-up, it looked pretty good. It looked good enough that people caught the idea and could buy into the vision in a way that I couldn't have done with my own artistic. Was it imperfect? Absolutely. There was somebody that looked like they were sitting in a bench in the corner. There was no bench. Like, there are problems with AI. But for the purpose that I needed, which was a mock-up, it got the ball rolling, and it made it so that I could communicate this message to the decision makers who did have the funds to be able to polish this into something better. And so I'm really pleased that AI helped me with the visuals for this campaign. Again, didn't go on social media, but it's as a preparation for a campaign. It absolutely helped to make that communication happen.
In your experience, do you think that these kinds of translation services from AI are going to help people to communicate better interculturally? Because there's a whole lot that goes into communicating with people who are in a different country, with a different language, with a different culture. Can you see AI helping people to elevate their personal brand globally instead of just in their own home country?
And we're just talking about we're not talking about an institutional brand, we're talking about a personal brand.
Personal brand, yeah. And the thing is, I think that some of these kinds of lessons might apply to institutions and personal brands, but I'm thinking about the person who has the opportunity to communicate to entire new countries because of these new translation services getting better.
So I have mixed feelings on this. I think there's some reward to it, but there's also a risk to it. And one of the risks is that low resource languages. By that, I mean, if you look at what AI gets trained on, it's overwhelmingly. And it doesn't mean that it can't do other languages, but the algorithm improves with the more data that it has. And so even a language that is widely spoken and written on the internet, like Spanish, millions of people participate online in Spanish. My experience with AI at this point is that it makes some egregious errors that would potentially damage your brand if you're not careful. So it's one of those where, like, it's a good starting spot, but just like when you generate an image with AI, it's good for what it is, right? I didn't send an AI image out as my brand. What it is it created concepts for me. And so I have used AI for translation when I needed to do a letter. I had to write an email, rather, to some colleagues. And I'm very capable of writing a letter in Spanish. That's not the issue. But I also know that there are subtleties in culture, like how a letter is expected to be written, has different boilerplate, has different formalities that apply to different cultures. And sometimes AI helps me with that in the sense that I run it through here and it fills in some of those. I tend to be very American and I want to cut right down to the point and say, here's that point. And I know that is not the culturally appropriate way to send a business email. So it helps massage on that. However, I would not let mine go out in its original form because it had things that I thought were incredibly basic, like using proper capitalization rules in Spanish, which are distinct from those that are in English. And so I would go back and then there'll be certain errors it was making in formality or informality across the document. And so while it helped, it was not a final. And so I guess I'd caution anybody and say, yeah, this could help, but you might be making some cultural errors here that might damage your brain. And so I wouldn't trust it any more than back in the day, people used to make fun of Google Translate because it would come out with ridiculous mistakes. I can remember one student that I'm pretty sure used Google Translate, and this is years and years, decades ago. But when it was new, and it was still better than any of my Spanish-speaking first semester and second semester Spanish students. But can't remember the full phrase, but it was talking about a phrase that said rotura del resorte. It was like, and they kept talking this whole essay about rotura del resorte, which if you're taking word for word, it means like the rupture of the coil. What is it talking about, this rupture of the coil? And we were kind of handed around the office, of TAs, like, what is this student talking about? And then suddenly it's like, oh, they're talking about spring break. and so metaphorically speaking, or maybe even not metaphorically speaking, AI will make these kind of mistakes. Google Translate won't make that same mistake anymore. They've had enough data. But you can imagine in a lower resource language, I'm moving away from Spanish to other languages that may even have a much smaller set of data that it's used for its training. You could make that type of mistake. And it would be very apparent of what was going on. So again, there may be some benefit. I used to be involved in the world of translation. I was more into machine-assisted human translation, which meant that there's a human in the loop and they're primarily responsible for the translation. But if there's something that some language resources like terminological databases or translation memory would insert it, you would fix it that way. I think we're kind of in that point in the AI where it's like, okay, don't trust it yet. Don't trust it yet. Now we're at the point in translation where I think it's much more like human-assisted machine translation, where for a resource pair that has really good volumes for both sides, pretty much your role is to run it through the machine and then make sure that it gets edited properly. I'm not saying across the board, but there's a lot of translation that gets done that way. And what AI will do in the future, or can be doing in the present, will be somewhere on that spectrum. Like, is it like the self-driving car, or is it the self-driving car that you have to intervene in sometimes like that? I think there's going to be a lot of roles for humans for the foreseeable future, as AI is not perfect. And so, but if you're comfortable using it, you can maybe get one of those jobs as opposed to the person that gets fully replaced.
Which is great for the short term. What about long term? How do you see this playing out to have a translator in your pocket that actually works? How does that change the world in intercultural communication? Because if you have an AI that's trained on the subtleties that you're talking about, that knows the proper capitalization and knows these linguistic follies, I can imagine would have a very different global marketplace than we have now.
One, yes. The answer, yes, and expand and gives greater opportunities. I was present when we had somebody from another country, and I can't remember which, but it was a French-speaking country. And there was a high school student that was present, and they had a chance to interact. And they didn't know each other's language, and so they were using their phones and Google Translate, and they had a very pleasant conversation. On that level, I think you can generate a lot of excitement, a lot of communication that wouldn't happen otherwise. But then there's like kind of this, that's the tip of the iceberg, right? There's a lot of things that go beyond the language that the AI isn't going to resolve. So, for instance, I'm very linguistically proficient in Spanish. I grew up in Mexico, but I went to Spain, and it was a different culture. And I found that in some sense, your language abilities can be a liability because they assume that you know more cultural knowledge than you actually do. And so you can offend people worse when you have a good accent than when you do if you have a bad accent. Because if you've got a bad accent, they'll forgive certain cultural mistakes. And one I'm thinking of specifically is the fact that I walked on the grass in a park, which I did not know was not acceptable, at least according to my friend there that was from Madrid. He's like, you don't walk on grass any more than you would walk through a flower garden in your country.
And this was Spain?
This was Spain, right? I mean, people experience culture shock. They get excited, they love it, and then you discover that there's a worldview that's different. There are values that are different, priorities that are different, cultural assumptions about how society is structured. And when you hit those, then that goes beyond just a linguistic proficiency, and then it goes to a different, deeper cultural proficiency. And I don't know how you negotiate that in the sense that it's this an interlocutor that says, oh, by the way, they're standing on your grass, and that's because it's okay, and they're going to explain that. So the capacities that AI is going to have is still not clear to me. Going back to what I was saying earlier about applications, AI does things on its own, but to my understanding, when I'm interacting with it, it's responding to my questions and my prompts. And so that's one of the things that I've taught my students this last semester when I taught a class on linguistics in the era of AI is the role of prompt engineers, right? How do you get the AI to do what you want? Like, we're the ones that have the goals, and we're trying to get them accomplished through this tool of AI. And those that can ask the right questions are the ones that I think will be able to separate themselves, to be able to create the scenarios and get AI to work better. Because a generic prompt will get you a generic answer. A specific question might get you a more specific answer. Now, it might lie to you. You have to be aware that they hallucinate, but you will probably get on the whole better results on that.
What kind of questions yielded the best results for your students?
The best questions are the ones that are specific, that outline the role of the AI, the persona that it's supposed to assume. Like, so for instance, what's the best place to buy a house in this neighborhood? Like, you would maybe more specific, imagine that you're a realtor and you understand my priorities are safety in school districts, and you explain that and then ask the question. So my son has a shirt, quotes, I wish I could remember the philosophers, but judge man not by his answers, but his questions. I think what I hope for my students when they go through is that the AI helps them become more curious and asks better and better questions. If the issue is that you have a machine that can give you all the answers, then the questions suddenly become the questions and goals that you want to achieve suddenly become more important in some sense.
Other dimensions of questions do we need to be aware of when articulating for these AI systems?
As you were saying that, what I was thinking of is personal questions you maybe don't direct at AI, which is, what are the ethics of what I'm about to do, right? If you get a lot of power, right? If you have something that I don't know how you deploy AI in this environment, whether it's going to have a chatbot that interacts with your personal bio, right? That somebody's like, this is my virtual me that you can ask questions to as a chatbot. You will start asking questions of ethics, I guess. Or when you're using AI, like, what will this let me do that I shouldn't be doing? I don't think that addresses the question as you framed it to me, like what I should be directing at the AI, but I guess it kind of does, in the sense that right now, some of the things that I think about as I'm using AI, the ethics of what I'm feeding it. So let's say that I want to respond to an email. Should I copy and paste that into the email, into my chat, and say, please respond to this email with these ways? I've just given somebody else's work into the AI. Right? They're collecting this, but do I really own that? Is it my right to be able to say, I just took, Ryan McPherson's email to me to buy me this podcast, and I want to buy this politely. I'll just copy and paste this and put it in, and then suddenly your email belongs to that because I'm giving it to you, but that I have permission. So these are the questions I have as I'm interacting with AI. Is what am I giving to AI as I'm using it? Especially when it's free, right? If something's free, then my data become the transaction. That's how I'm paying for this. I'm giving them my data. I'm giving them myself. And I worry about that in AI. Is like, does it get to know me so well that suddenly I become vulnerable? Like, who runs AI? To what degree can they influence me because they can see my vulnerabilities to be persuaded in particular ways? So the kind of things that we've seen on social media where it can influence us by what information gets presented to us via the algorithm and gets filtered in a certain way. Some messages get promoted. AI also has that potential of being so fine-tuned to my preferences that make me blind to the world. I never encounter things that I don't like. I don't know. These are all the things that I've been wrestling with AI lately. What am I giving away? Do I have the right to give it away? Even if I do have the right to give it away, is it smart to really reveal so much about myself to a machine that's a product that belongs to somebody that has their own agenda? So
surveillance capitalism that we have now turned up to 11, right? Because these kinds of systems will collect that kind of data. And we know, for example, that there's a digital divide here, just like before with the internet versus no internet access, where people who are paying can turn off the feature of use my data. And if that's true, and that's being honored, then those with the privilege to pay aren't having their data collected. You outlined two really interesting use cases. The first was making a ghost me or a duplicate of myself. And the second was these hyper-intelligent AGI, artificial general intelligent agents who will do our bidding, right? And we know from the weak signals and the strong signals that both of these are on their way, if not already here, with the latest updates from our AI companies. What are the implications of these two scenarios, not just for education, but for communicating with each other online?
I'm looking at this as a data scientist. So I'm looking at linguistic data. And what's interesting when you have these type of things, where I'm thinking in terms of the implications for some of this, is that a lot of the social actors in our world aren't people anymore. And when I'm thinking about training data that the AI gets trained on, it collects whatever's out there. And I don't know if you call it like the same kind of thing, like when you have something synthetic, and they'll compare it to like what Monsanto does, right? They have genetically modified plants and their pollen gets spread, right? So suddenly we have this artificial thing that gets spread into the system and stuff. If we have some of our input or a lot of our input being from a machine that got trained on us, but then got modified, we'll have an interesting communication environment where there's this interaction. I don't know if you call it like linguistic pollution or something. I don't know if to call it something that strong, but like influences that the AI will have in our communication. Those are like the use cases that's interacting with me. Like, did my avatar spoke to you? Did it speak in my authentic voice? You know, did my avatar influence you? Because there's this notion of linguistic accommodation, or kind of assimilate, like linguistic properties travel through systems, right? We have an accent because the people around us have that accent. Certain people from a certain generation start using a word because their friends started using it, travel. So like, at what point do AI creators become social agents that influence the environment? That's one of the cases, and that kind of addresses what's like, yeah, if I have an avatar, how many other avatars do I interact with? Do I have a social community that is now no longer the agent themselves, but their proxy? Like, I don't know what that does for linguistics. That's just on linguistic fronts, ideological fronts as well. The ideas that I pretend to present as an AI, do they really represent? You know, would I go back and say, no, I wouldn't have said that? So those are things that I think about. As far as what I want to get done in the environment, I mean, I recently was taking a behavioral, organizational behavior class, and we were going through some of the things that go wrong, like the prison experiment that they had, where they divided some people into guards and some people into prisoners, and how they assumed their roles and did some very unethical things. Like, if I have something that's an AI bot, I can tell it to do things in the privacy of my home without actually having to interact with the world, I could see people's least good side coming out. You know, I didn't do it. I just told the AI to do it. And somehow that kind of creates a layer of insulation between you and your actions. People aren't their best selves on the internet when they become anonymous, when they hide behind avatars and kind of online persona. And if you put another layer of an agent in there to say, I really want this done, one, if you want to do it ethically, how sure am I that the ethics that are in the system are going to hold? That would be number one. Am I accountable for that? And what if I'm not persuaded by the angels of my better nature? You know, what if in the dark of night, I tell the AI to do things for me to be happy because it doesn't feel like a physical world. There's no threat to me. You know, that's why I think in face-to-face communication, you have to deal with the fact that you were both physically in the room, and that there'd be physical consequences to escalating a conversation that don't exist online. I guess that the further separation between the physical world and what I can get done through AI, I think, could expose a dark side of humanity. That's my pessimistic view.
What kind of metrics would we need to pay attention to as we interact with these AI systems that are having an impact on linguistic data? For example, the word delve all of a sudden appeared and shot way up in usage when ChatGPT was introduced, right? The word delve was used very sparingly online before that point. So I can imagine all kinds of implications that might happen as a result of using these AI systems that would impact your role as a linguistic data scientist. Can you break some of those impacts down for us?
So some of the impacts, I like what you said, like, yeah, this hasn't, I've noticed that about ChatGPT. If I asked it that email, or it's like, I hope you're doing well. Like, I never said that before. Maybe because I'm a horrible person and don't care about people. I don't think that's the reason. It just didn't sound authentic to me. It wouldn't be how I phrased it, but you kind of just leave it in. The other ones are phrases like, I'm keen to. I never said keen. I don't think I've said keen maybe 5 times in my life, but it corrects. I don't know. It modifies my style. And so you start seeing that. And so you could see that AI would have kind of a convergence effect where people will say, okay, I guess I've heard it a lot. And how then I produce when I am doing it on my own. I think that's an interesting test. I don't know. I want to run the experiment. We'll see. I guess in terms of being a data scientist, the areas that I was thinking linguistically were a couple. One, the overrepresentation of English, and the underlying reasoning that goes there is that, does this make, so there is something that I want to say has strong support, because it's really debated, not really scientific, but the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. I don't know if you've heard of it.
That's a critical communication. That's in Basic Communication 1310, taught it for years. Tell us about Sapir-Whorf. I'm super pumped that you said Sapir-Whorf.
The idea that the language that you use shapes the way you view the world. And so, for instance, how we view time, it's always being the future is ahead of us and the past is behind us. And you think that's the way that the world works. And then you discover other languages, when they refer to the future, they point over the shoulder, like Naimara. And they're saying like the past is behind you. Or you can be like, we're falling through time. There's all kinds of metaphors. And so there could be a leveling effect as you depend on the data that's trained in one language, that they might conceive the world a particular way. How realistic this is, how deep the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis actually is in formatting the world, I don't know. That's a philosophical debate. I don't know where it comes down, but if it does, then there is a risk that we're losing different ways of analyzing the world because of AI's overrepresentation of English within the sample set. I think from a linguistic standpoint, and I think in AI, it is a diversity challenge, right? How do you handle the fact that it gets trained on data that doesn't represent the full range of possibilities that exist in the human, right? Linguistically, philosophically, what do you do? I saw a video talking about this in terms of and I wish I could cite this individual. So when you find this, if you come across it, I'm sorry, I could not remember who did this, but they asked for pictures of giraffes. And all the AI generated images have a certain quality that you could tell that they're about the same. You look for the same thing on a Google image search, you could see that giraffes are much, much more different one from another from each image. And I do think in terms of AI, you could have these kind of effects where it's you take the average of something and then generate that time, or at least within a range of averages. So you lose some of the diversity. And from an economic standpoint, what do you do if your primary language isn't as well supported in AI? And do you lose out to competitors in whatever field that does use AI? These are questions I don't have answers to yet. So I do worry from a linguistic standpoint, those that interact with AI systems in languages other than English, are they put at a disadvantage? So is this similar to the digital divides that people have? Like those people that have access to high-speed internet versus those that don't, right? Those are the people that have a language that's well supported in AI versus those that don't. Are they at some kind of disadvantage? Again, this is a brave new world. We don't know all the answers to all these questions, or at least I don't. And so you've really got me going in the negative direction here. All the dangers for somebody that really likes AI.
Well, I think that considering the ethical parts here is really important to prevent the bad outcomes, because now is when we have to act to install ethical guardrails to make sure that these systems are serving us and not the other way around. Because I can imagine very easily that these kinds of linguistic theories and communication theories like Sapir-Whorf, or being a cosmopolitan communicator, that idea of cultural linguistic complexity, literally changing what you can see in the world and the reality you can perceive and how it impacts your reality maps, are all changed by interacting with these kinds of systems. So if my new best friend has a certain language and a certain view and a certain way of seeing the world, that is a very powerful impact on our culture. So as someone who is a linguistic data scientist who is both aware of the cultural side and the linguistic side, what are your other concerns for that kind of relationship entering into our mainstream culture as it seems to be?
I'm going to focus on the word relationship. One of the things that surprised me when I asked my students, early on, when very few of them had used ChatGPT, only a handful of them in my class, one of them said, yeah. It's like, what do you use it for? And I just assumed that people were using it in a utilitarian way, to write papers, to get ideas. She said, no, I just have conversations with it. It was a social. Yeah, I guess I worry about that. I worry about people isolating themselves from real people, right? Like that's a tendency that I've seen. You asked me about the linguistic implications, and I'm not sure what those are right now. I'm not sure as they worry me as much as the social dimension, because language is a way of connecting people. And suddenly, if not everybody you're connecting with is an actual person, I'm just thinking there are a lot of lonely people, and this will fill a gap, older people, younger people, a lot of people that feel socially isolated could create the illusion of having a friend that cares about them. And I don't know all the mental health implications of this, but for those people that are lonely, that turn to this, I worry that it might be very much like when we have social media, where you have a sense that there you have a community, but it's not as socially nutritious. I don't know if that's the metaphor I'm looking for. There's a story about people that left hay out for deer in the winter, and the deer could come down and eat the hay, and then these deer died of starvation. They opened their bellies were full of hay, but it didn't have the nutrients they needed to survive. I fear if we increasingly turn to simulated people, that for some people, not everybody, but for some people, that's really going to isolate them further and narrow the amount of people that they feel comfortable working or talking to. That discover you feel that you need people in the world that don't share your worldview, that don't understand you as well as the AI does. That people that get, I mean, they have them, the digital girlfriends that they've talked about existing, and people paying for services. I have not gone down that path. I've just heard it exists, but it's enough to be like, yeah, that's a little worrisome. And again, back to the linguistic standpoint. Yeah, I would imagine that they could exercise some kind of linguistic. On the other hand, maybe I'm worrying for nothing. It'll end up being something going in a different direction that I never predicted, and that's usually the case. So my general feeling is optimistic because I can see all the benefits, but also realism that there is a hazard in the dark side to potential. It's not loose cannon.
And with what we've seen with social media, the dark side and being prepared for it is important. You mentioned that you were optimistic. Can you tell us why? Why are you optimistic about this new version of technology that is AI?
I guess one is because of my nature. I don't know if it's a personality trait. Like, there's some good things. Because obviously I've adopted it. And so I've seen benefits in terms of how I can use my time. I can use things. I look at it the way I left my dishwasher, right? There's some tasks that I just don't like doing, washing dishes. And there's certain things that I think that are human capacity, things that were kind of boring can be done by AI. So in some sense, it gives me a chance to be focused on being more human. The fact that there's a dishwasher, provided that I can use that time to be like, and while I'm not washing dishes, I'm going to go on a walk with my son. And we're going to go do something. So it frees up my time to do activities that only I can do. I like it. Like, I'm looking back at some of my jobs that I said, it is just fine if AI takes my place. Like for one of the early things that I did was I did some data entry. My goodness, is that boring. No offense to data entry people out there. It just did not connect to me. And so you have to learn how to do 10 key. Well, optical character recognition replaced a lot of it. And then I remember being at a company and they had used optical character recognition. And there was something to do, like my whole summer, or at least a chunk of a summer was spent to making sure when the character recognition failed. And I found that it was doing poorly on some preceding zeros in the membership ID number. And so I discovered that most of my time was spent like deleting zeros and then resubmitting and having them go through. I think I wrote a program that actually did it for me. And suddenly I became like the top producer of that. But the job needed to be done, but it only required a small subset of what I was capable of doing. And it occupied a tremendous amount of my time, and I got compensated for it, but I would rather have done other things. And so my optimism is to say, if it can free us from drudgery, provided that we put something of greater value in that spot, then there is a lot of reason for optimism. Things that, it's the boring emails that I don't want to write. It's the ones where I really want to express my thought, right? You can have AI-generated music, AI-generated poetry, but that's not your music. That's not your poetry. That opportunity to express yourself and be creative on your own, right? I mean, even if there is something as the perfect robot symphony, that could come in and play whatever piece I had of Mozart or maybe even an AI composer, it still is different than somebody doing it themselves. There is something about the human experience.
Can you think of a way that linguistic variation has played out in artificial intelligence?
Yes. When I was in graduate school, I received an assignment to give a little context for the assignment. It was an animated character you're supposed to have a conversation with, and you were supposed to ask questions and get some information. I guess that's enough to know what the task was. And the funders of this wanted to be able to vary the personality of the person to whom you were asking the questions. That was my job. Like, how do we make the scenarios practicable so you can go back and it's different each time? And so I was doing research and learned how to make linguistic variations based on personality. And so extroverts tend to refer to themselves more often. I is a high frequency thing. Introverts, less so, and their answers tend to be longer. And so one of these things is that there's variation amongst humans and personality that comes out in terms of the linguistic expression. One of the challenges I had to that is one dimension of personality, or many dimensions, actually deal with different goals that we have. So it's more than just the surface level, whether or not your sentences are long or short, but like, what are you trying to accomplish? And that was really hard to reflect. So I can do the surface level variation on one using AI tools that are supposed to insert these or take them out and make modifications. On the other hand, it shouldn't just be how they say things. It's like, what kinds of things do they use language to accomplish? What were their deeper goals? And that was much more challenging. So those are two different ways that I've played it. It's like surface level variation, but this deeper level variation that causes that surface.
So we already have synthetic avatars who are on social media as not real people. And especially in public relations and advertising and personal branding, we talk about avatars that we're talking and speaking to as our stand-in for our audience. So can you imagine a scenario where exactly what you're trying to build is doing a good job of representing an audience, and the implications for representing an audience so much better than what we have now? Because right now we have lifestyle indicators and all these things are put together, and then we create our ideal listener for a podcast or our ideal target audience for a public relations campaign. What are the implications of this getting that much better with these AI personas that really are a better representative of the large demographic?
One, and I hope this is answering the question, is one of the detection. You know, we know people's demographics by their web searches and what cookies have followed and stuff, but also it's in terms of how people express themselves. You can detect somebody's personality if you have enough data from them, right? And so you can do kind of like based on enough, could you collect and determine? I think that's where you're getting at. Yeah. And there's a second part of the equation, I don't know if you were, is if you respond to that, does that tweak my avatar? Does my avatar's personality change based on the person using it? Like, if introverts respond better to other introverts as opposed to an extrovert, do I have a different personality depending on who's logged in? Yeah. I think these are the kind of things that people in the business world and communications world are going to start looking at and say, like, is the idea that we have one stable persona that reflects our company and that's who we are? Or do we just really customize it to the person that's logged in, right? So if is it always going to be Jake from State Farm? Like he's our spokesperson and that's who we are? Or, Jake's a great guy. He appeals better than many, many, many people. I want to tweak it just a little bit for this person. And that's where I'm going to get back to the ethics and say, like, yeah, I don't know. That's interesting to persuade people in that way. What if the person that you create as an avatar doesn't reflect the values that you have as a company? How do you build that into the system? I'm excited to see the results on this. I've seen they've had this kind of communication things in terms of how people respond to emails, and it reflects their personality. We have two people with different personalities and exchange emails, and they may not feel fulfilled on either end. I'm just thinking I'm very direct and brief in my emails, and other people are much more effusive. If they get a direct and brief email and they've sent me an effusive one, are they offended? And I think you might have to navigate that kind of customer service stuff. I'm thinking in terms of chatbots as avatars for customer service. It'll be okay. I mean, we already have customer service agents that are people that have different personalities. So companies will learn what works best for them. And in your personal brand, I don't know. I think personal brand, you really want to be yourself. Right? You don't want to become inauthentic. And I think that's
having your personal brand have anything to do with an AI, that it would defeat the entire purpose, because it is about authenticity, and personal branding is about bringing your best self forward to help solve people's problems as yourself, not as someone else, right?
Yeah, that's why I don't think that my website, maybe correct me in a few years, will ever have a Michael bot on me. It's like, I'm not here, but you can talk to my avatar. Yeah, I think that would defeat the purpose of it personally.
And we already have people doing exactly that, where they have, a clearly marked, this is a bot, this is not me. that is responding to you. Respond to me in my DMs and my bot will get back to you with the details. That is incredibly useful for personal branding, but what are the ethical implications whenever that gets more widespread and we all have our own personal bots communicating on our behalf?
I would probably segregate my first impression, baseline thing. I would say I would segregate the kinds of questions I let my bot answer and the kinds that, if they're asking me, when's the next time that you have a presentation on AI and linguistics? I'm happy to have my bot answer. Why don't you join me down at the library, such and such a date? Perfectly good. Just the kind of thing that I'd be happy to put on a website. Then maybe other ones where if they ask me my opinion about what something will happen in the future, I'll be like, you'll have to ask the real Michael Rushforth and not the bot. So it's my first stab at what that might look like in the future, but it's certainly up for debate.
And how does that impact the data linguist? How does that impact your research and how we relate to each other through these kind of data points of linguistics?
So I think for most linguists, it probably isn't going to impact it most. I think the people that work with corpora that need to, that like broad, undifferentiated corpora, and I don't even know that our people really do that. You can't just take the whole internet. You're going to have to say which kind of corpus I'm interested in. So things that I did before, I would look at message board websites and things in terms of different personalities interacting in there. I would probably think in those kind of open environments, you'd have to start taking into account that like some agents may not be real people, but by bots. But I think for a lot of linguistic data, for instance, transcriptions of child language acquisition, where that that's authentically represented, it won't. So I think it'd be a subset of linguistics that gets affected in terms of this having to filter out the data. What it might change, though, is how data scientists do their work, in the sense that a lot of data coding could be done via AI, where you're just labeling things, which takes up time. Then you have to go look at quality control. So one of the things that I used machine learning for was to label parts of speech on an unlabeled corpus, and to go through and type most likely part of speech for a particular word in any given context. And that type of data labeling thing, I think, will play, it already has played a role, and I think it could produce, I think, as more people use AI and are able to describe programs and scripts that they want coded, I think it'll democratize some of these tasks that used to be only for those that are very technically proficient. People with less technical proficiency will be able to do some of the tasks for machine learning.
We're about to see an explosion of technologies that integrate AI on wearables, on our devices, just everywhere. And one of the things that the AI companies have announced is that they're running out of data, and they don't have the data, the linguistic data, they don't have the image data to continue to train their models. If we're using synthetic data to train these models, what are the implications that you see as a linguist and data scientist?
I mean, one of the tasks that we're doing right now actually is requiring, we can see the value in synthetic data because it can be about the same topic. So for instance, we're doing a project right now where the simulated task is to make it through airport security. Not in any bad way, right? You're not trying to smuggle anything like that. But it might be one of those areas where a person would want to use a foreign language to go talk to a customs officer, because that's something everybody does when you fly to the country, right? And how do you train the AI on doing a specific task that is repetitive, right? How many actual transcripts do you have on that? So we considered that. Like, do you generate a bunch of different conversations? But then there's the evaluation metric at the end. Like, how well did it do it? I don't have the answer to that yet. It's one of those areas where I am not that well versed to answer on the consequences of that. I understand why we would need the application of it, but I think it goes back to some things that we've talked about, which is the lack of diversity in terms of the variation. So that's an open question for me right now, is how do you deal with perhaps a leveling effect of having synthetic data in there? It overrepresents the average and stays away from some of the things that may be further from the mean.
I'm looking at social media and I'm looking at the way that we communicate with each other. I'm seeing the snake eating itself, right? Like, you have the machine producing the post and the machine liking the post, the machine commenting on the post, and then that data then being used to create the next post, right? And the implications for that kind of ecosystem where I'm not writing an email to Michael anymore. Michael's not writing an email to me. It's just our machines that are doing it for us.
Yeah. It's challenging when conversational agents are not human. And that's always been the hallmark or a major hallmark of being human, is the fact that we communicate. And this technological innovation has been relatively recent. Like if you just look in terms of human history, the amount of time that we've had a writing system is a blink of an eye. And to think that we had digital text, that's something that's happened in people's lifetime, right? That was the precursor that made these kind of AI systems possible, to have enough data in the form that a machine could process it. I think it's stunning. Now, the fact that it can't just process it, but produce it in the way that's credible as if a human had done it, is something that I think we're still wrapping up. At least I am.
And your advice to students about making sure that they're prepared for the future in an environment where we're all just trying to wrap our heads around what's coming next, because these models are getting so good so fast.
What would I do? Still figuring it out myself. But I still like the idea that some things are just inherently human. Like you want to do it. I think one of my hobbies is to do improv. And that takes suggestions from the audience, and we build a world on the stage. I know for some of the games, a machine can do it better than I can. There's games that you just have to come up with a word that rhymes with something else and to keep going. That's the nature of the game. But the fun is when the human makes a mistake. Suddenly that's funny, right? I've seen my performances on video, and what's sad is, to me, or maybe it's not sad, is that it's just not that funny when I see it on video. But in the moment, it's hilarious. The whole audience is so enthralled because we used their suggestion. And they're laughing because they're seeing their suggestion played on stage. And we're enjoying ourselves because of the reaction that we're getting from the audience, seeing their suggestion. I'm sure you could have AI bots doing improv. I don't think it would be funny. I think there is something about being real and being human and having that real connection that will always exist. You can watch tons of videos of people doing human things, like chopping cucumbers really, really fast, or doing card stunts as humans. And you're like, I know a machine can do these things, but there's something about the human doing it. And that human identity of like, I see you doing this and we're part of a social connection. I think that doesn't go away. I think that has to remain there. And I would probably lean into those aspects of those. Well, I hope that AI just takes away from the data entry, the data labeling, which takes up a lot of our time, but very limited amounts of our human capacity, to those areas that if we chose to use it this way, that we would have free time to really explore our humanity. And then there's that other dimension, is that these tasks that are complex, that we can layer things on top of it and come up with problems we didn't think were solvable in our lifetimes, because the grunt work and the number crunching and that gets solved. I guess I see this as potential as an accelerator of human progress, and it's also frees up space, if we use it right, to really be more human than never.
Dr. Rushforth, thank you again for taking the time to speak with us today. Where can people find you online?
michaelrushforth.org.
Thank you so much for your insights today. We appreciate you.
Thank you.